All right, man. Peace. So, brothers, the hashtag #MeToo movement is about to hit the NBA like a bomb. And it's quite ironic because the NBA has styled itself as being at the vanguard of propriety, particularly towards females and homosexuals and other demographics that this society claims are so marginalized. So it's very ironic, very interesting that they're about to get caught up in this shitstorm because this is what happens when you allow an environment of fraternization between the man and the woman. You're going to have males that overstep their bounds, and in this case, that certainly seems to be the case. That Mr. Tadima Ussery and also Mr. Earl Sneed were operating according to fraternity rules, frat house rules. They thought that those females in the workplace were just community property. And let's be very, very clear. That's why I always accentuate to you brothers on this channel that if and when you decide to embark in any type of sexual relationship with a female in the workplace, that you save any and all documentation that you exchange with her that is of a sexual nature so that you can prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that no, you were not harassing her, that it was mutual, and that she was as attracted to you as you were to her, and that she is the one who initiated the conversation, the relationship, etc. Very important.
Welcome to The Jump. I am Rachel Nichols. Stephen Jackson and Amin Al-Hassan will be joining me in a minute, but there's something we need to talk about first. Sports Illustrated has published an incredibly thorough and highly disturbing investigation into the Dallas Mavericks. SI's reporter spoke to more than a dozen employees. Those employees gave repeated, consistent accounts of a corporate culture that has been downright hostile to women, starting at the very top with the man who led the organization as its president and CEO for nearly 20 years. That man's name is Tardima Ussery, and he left the Mavericks 3 years ago, but the article describes how in his decades with the team, Ussery routinely propositioned women who worked for him. Go to a meeting with the head of your company, the women at the Mavericks told SI, and be ready for him to try to fondle your thigh or your calf or physically corner you in.
So, brothers, pay very close attention to these accusations, which, I mean, if you have 12 people that are willing to co-sign that the workplace environment was that hostile and that this person, Tardima Ussery, was at the forefront of it, I'm pretty sure that it is the case, that it is true. It's a very thin line between being flirtatious and borderline aggravated assault. Like you're putting your hand on that woman's thigh. You're talking about gangbangs. I'm sure that most brothers with their heads screwed on straight are not going to get involved with anything like that. All right? Not if you have common sense. But as I've already stated many times on this channel, in the workplace, when you're dealing with females, when you have both genders in the same workspace, people are going to end up having sex. They are going to end up playing around with each other. But there has to be more respect than that. It has to be more nuanced than that. And when I say more respect, I'm not even talking about for the woman. I'm talking about for yourself. Anyone who's dumb enough to conduct themselves like this in the workplace, they deserve to get raked over the coals. But please pay very close attention. According to all reports, it was an animal house, frat house type of environment. But the only two people that they're showing and that they're showcasing in regards to this issue are two men of color, quote unquote. That being Tardima Ussery and Earl Sneed. I'm sure that there were some other parties involved, but they will not show their face. Please recognize that. So if you're a so-called black man and you choose to remain in the corporate workforce, understand that you will definitely, as always, be held under much higher scrutiny. It is what it is. Look at this nonsense. Dude said you're going to get gang banged, aren't you? Yeah. Then the chick says, no, actually, I'm going to the movies with friends. And then he says, no, you're definitely getting gang banged. Like, I mean, come on, man. What type of dumb shit is this? And where are these women's men at? I guess they were scared to lose their job, but this is what happens when people worship their job. And I'm not going to necessarily, quote unquote, blame the woman. But it's just very interesting that there was no recourse for them allegedly in that environment. There was nowhere where they could send emails or alert anyone to what was going on. That tells you that, number one, They were more concerned about keeping their job than they were concerned with this situation. And number two, this person, Mr. Ussery, is a made man. This person, Mr. Ussery, must have connections at the very highest levels with the NBA offices, going back to David Stern. Because for him to be doing this for 20 years, no. He has to have a lot of connections. Look at the bottom here. Terdima stops me near where the main door is and says to me seriously just one time. Like, come on. What type of lame, low-level piece of shit is begging a woman to have sex with him just one time? Terdima asked me if in another life would I marry him. I respond, if it was another life, I would be a millionaire and own this team, and he couldn't handle working for me. Well, it shows you how dumb the woman is, because if you were a millionaire, you wouldn't have enough money to own the team.
In an elevator, or ask you to sleep with him, or in one particularly gross story, have him tell you in the middle of a team dining room how he's picturing you as part of a gangbang. And of course, when the team president is acting like that, well, the employees SI spoke to say that set a tone for men throughout the organization, a tone of preying on women from all sides, a tone that they say hasn't changed even since Ussery left. So did these women complain to HR, to their supervisors? Yes, they told SI. But then they were told to toughen up. Or in one woman's case, she reports being actually threatened if she didn't keep her mouth shut. Now, Ussery himself denies all of these allegations. He told SI in a statement, quote, "I am deeply disappointed that anonymous sources have made such outright false and inflammatory accusations against me." He then added that, quote, "During my nearly 20-year tenure with the Mavericks, I am not aware of any sexual harassment complaints about me or any findings by the organization that I engaged in inappropriate conduct."
Look, let me say this very quickly. I'm sure that what is being alleged about this person is true. Once again, for there to be 12 different sources that are on record as stating that the environment was that hostile and that he was at the forefront of it. But I'm also pretty sure that there were a lot of females that were flirting with the men as well. Particularly females that were most likely flirting with him, seeing as he was at the relative top of the food chain. This is what happens when you engage in shenanigans with these various women and you don't have your own records. You must keep your own records. They claim that the women were going to HR and that they were going here and that they were going there. I wonder how many of them actually have email records that they sent something to Mark Cuban. I have to believe that they don't have them, because if they did, I'm sure that the mainstream media would have exposed the fact that Mark Cuban is lying when he states that he was never made aware of the conditions in the workplace. As transparent as Mark Cuban acts like he is, for not one woman to have a record of her sending him an email stating that the workplace was that toxic sexually, it just seems very strange. But that's the type of confusion that you have when you mix liberal women with simps. A lot of these guys are simps coming to work to throw themselves at women. Like, how thirsty can you be, man? The fuck out of here.
Yeah, that last part, that's just actually a flat out lie. Read the Dallas Morning News clips from all the way back in 1998. You will see that Ussery was the subject of a 6-week internal investigation for just this kind of contact. Of course, internal investigation is another way of saying that the men who worked for the CEO were told to investigate their boss, and guess what? He was cleared. I am shocked. Interestingly, when Ussery finally left the Mavs, it was for a big job with Under Armour. You want to know how long he lasted there? Less than 2 months. The SI report details how a female employee reported him to HR for, being sexually inappropriate with her in an elevator. And unlike the Mavericks, Under Armour appears to have actually done something about it. And that's really the key here. Are you a business that is okay with this kind of stuff, or aren't you? With the Mavericks, the problem does seem to be institutional, especially when you consider what happened with another team employee, Earl Snead. Back in 2011, Snead beat his girlfriend, leaving her with a broken wrist, multiple bruises. Police charged him. Snead pled guilty. That's bad in itself. It also meant Snead could no longer travel to Canada, which he needed to do when the Mavericks played the Raptors. But hey, the Mavs decided to keep him on staff anyway. In fact, Snead ended up dating another Mavericks employee who in 2014 showed up to work with a swollen face and told HR that Snead had hit her.
That's crazy. Look, let me say this. You're so out of control as a man, and you venerate the woman so much that when she's acting up, you just can't tell her to go about her day and have a nice life, and you're not going to deal with her anymore. You decide that you're going to lay hands on a woman that you're working with. That shows you that he has no self-awareness whatsoever, and that he's living in a false reality that was created by Mark Cuban and that environment. It's just interesting to see that Mark Cuban is allowed to still own the team, seeing as it seems as though the toxic level of the rapport between the men and the women in his corporation, in the Dallas Mavericks, is institutional from the top down. So it certainly does not bode well for him in regards to how he's going to have to depict himself from here on out. Those dreams that he had of running for president are over. That's a wrap. But once again, brothers, please pay very close attention to the fact that the two poster boys for a sexual harassment issue that is company-wide are two so-called black men. I'm sure that there are Caucasian men who are also harassing women, but they're not going to be shown there. And it is what it is. I really don't care about that. Point being is that I highlight that so that you brothers are aware of how the media operates and how it will be done and executed in your corporation if you get involved in anything even close to this. Because for all intents and purposes, particularly in this atmosphere, the female can send an email about anything. You could have been dating her and you guys just quote unquote broke up and she doesn't like how it ended. And she can send an email stating that so-and-so was harassing me. That's why I tell you, brothers, to please save all documentation of any interaction that you have with a female when it's not of a professional nature. Try to keep it professional, but if it transcends that and it goes the sexual route, hold on to any emails, text messages, voicemails. Hold on to that shit. Hold on until you leave that environment. And hell, hold on to it for years after you leave. You never know what might happen down the line. But for a jackass like this, running around beating broads up, and I mean, come on. That tells me that he thought that he was above the law and that he was so close to Mark Cuban that he thought that he can get away with it. So it will be interesting to see if the commissioner, Adam Silver, allows Mark Cuban to escape all this.
Again, the team didn't fire Snead. Instead, and this is truly jaw-dropping, Snead tells the Dallas Morning News that it was all okay since, hey, the team had him sign a contract promising he'd no longer have one-on-one fraternization with any female employees. You've got to be kidding me. Think about what message that sends to every woman in the office.
Well, no, think about the message that it sends to the men, to everyone, the men and the women. Which is that, well, it's not okay for Snead to deal with any more bitches, but everybody else here, you guys can all just continue on with the fuckery and the tomfoolery. That's why I tell brothers, man, only deal with the woman that you're intimate with, that you're in a relationship with, and the females in your family. These random broads in the workplace, leave them alone. Ignore them. Ignore them. And when they start to flip out over you ignoring them, you make sure that you go to HR and you send the emails. And you say this person is being unprofessional for whatever reason. You already know what the reason is. The modern day liberal woman will flip out if you ignore them. But you be the one to instigate a change in demeanor. Don't be the one who allows yourself to be manipulated.
This guy can hit one of you, and we are going to keep him around and make you continue to see him every day and work with him. And that's just the women inside the team who knew what was going on. Snead had a job where he was with the Mavericks on road trips, putting him to work and travel situations with any number of women who work with the NBA, who had no idea they were hanging out with a man who had repeatedly turned violent. ESPN.com's Tim McMahon spoke to Mark Cuban about Snead this morning. Cuban admitted that after Snead was arrested, he simply accepted Snead's version of events and never even read the police report.
Why is that? Because Mark Cuban was banging bitches too. He was banging a bunch of bitches too. And most likely, he may have decided to ignore any warnings about what was going on in the lower levels of his institution. But I just find it hard, once again, to believe that all these women were getting sexually harassed and none of them can provide documentation that they sent a letter, a memo, an email to Mark Cuban directly. That's just strange. But this story just seems to be getting started, so we'll see what may come out down the line.
Now, to his credit, Cuban took full responsibility for keeping Snead employed, saying, quote, "It was a horrible mistake in hindsight." And yesterday, he fired Snead. As for Ussery, who Cuban worked side by side with for years, well, Cuban won't answer questions about Ussery. He did tell SI, quote, "This is all new to me." He also told SI, quote, "I want to deal with this issue. I mean, there's obviously a problem in the Mavericks organization, and we've got to fix it. That's it. We're going to take every step. It's not something we tolerate."
This may be the beginning of the end for Mark Cuban. To be quite frank with you, the Mavericks have been a terrible organization since they won the championship. They've been a terrible team and a terrible organization. Most likely even before they won the championship, to be quite honest with you, in light of these revelations. And then he comes out and he states that we have to tank this year. That is not good for business. There are two different types of deaths. It is where they have to put a hit out on you, like they did with Donald Sterling. And then there's the, you know what, we're going to give you a bottle of wine. We're going to run a warm bath for you. And we're going to, give you a couple pills and you know what to do. You go ahead and you off yourself. And that may be what they decide to do with Mr. Mark Cuban. Because this hashtag #MeToo shit is going to roll over them big time if they don't nip it in the bud. Now, supposedly, Adam Silver has decided to form a hotline for females who believe that they are in the midst of being sexually harassed or disrespected in the workplace. What that's going to do is not only is that going to allow them to report what's going on, that's also going to open up the can of worms of empowered liberal females that believe that a man was looking at them sexually or said something sexually that may have just been quote unquote innocuous. We'll see. We will see. But once again, brothers, the point of all this is, as I always tell you, make sure that you remain professional in a professional environment. You only get personal or intimate with the female that you're with, or you relay personal information to the females in your family. All these random broads in the workplace, keep it at high and by, if that. And if you do decide to bed them down, save all information.
So what are the steps? Well, Cuban has suspended his HR director. He has also hired a law firm to launch an investigation. The firm is led by a former prosecutor in the Manhattan District Attorney's Office. And hey, the Mavericks should get credit for hiring someone with a strong ethical reputation. But there's still plenty of questions here. Because how independent is this investigation when the Mavericks are hiring someone for this instead of the NBA itself? Will the report be public? And if so, who from the league or the team will get their hands on editing it or trying to get out in front of it before it is released?
It depends on how bad it is, Miss Rachel Nichols. If the investigation proves that there was sexual harassment at all levels and that it was extremely pervasive, which I'm sure Mark Cuban knows already, because I'm sure that he partook in it, it wouldn't surprise me if there were some orgies going on. All the term gangbang is a low-level term for orgy. As I tell you brothers all the time, man, I don't know how many times I have to tell you this. The gods of the entertainment industry are Pan and Bacchus. Bacchus is the god of wine, of emotional love, of orgies, of the theater, so on and so forth. Please keep that in mind. Right now, Mark Cuban can play dumb. And I believe that Silver will allow him to play dumb for now. Unless the Me Too movement puts their stiletto heels on Adam Silver's Adam's apple and tells him, look, we need a pound of flesh. We read that report, and we can handle this one of two ways. Either you can deal with it or we can deal with it. And we can totally ruin the reputation of your league as being the most woke league of all the sports leagues. Right now, the NBA is concentrating on trying to catch the NFL. They don't have time for this shit right now.
And how does a man like Mark Cuban, who repeatedly brags about how hands-on he is as an owner, who last year, you may remember, got involved in the minutia of counting the number of games team beat writers attended when deciding how to hand out credentials, say that he never knew any of the stories that it took a couple of reporters just a few months to collect. And if he really didn't know about that situation that was clearly so pervasive, what does that say? And how many other teams have issues like this we haven't heard about yet?
Well, I'm sure that this is going on with the majority of the teams in the NBA, Rachel Nichols, particularly since the NBA and all sports leagues are viewed as being for men and, having the majority of masculine energy. So the females who do try to intrude, the overall intent is, no problem. You could pass through these gates once you give up a piece of ass. That's how the entertainment industry works. I'm sure that you gave up a piece of ass here and there to get your TV show, Miss Nichols. I have little doubt about that. I mean, for those of you who don't know, this female here, Rachel Nichols, she gets wet in her panties whenever they show a highlight of Allen Iverson. So it would not shock me if Allen tapped that once or twice back in the early 2000s, allegedly. Okay?
The answers here won't be easy, but we need to find them. Because this game is too good, the sport is too good, this league is too good to let something this bad continue.
Well, they're not going to let it continue, because if they try to let it continue, the Me Too movement is going to take a chunk out of their ass. There's no doubt about that. They're going to descend down on Adam Silver and the NBA offices.
And I want to bring in Amin and Steven. And you can hear my voice. I stumbled over a few words there. This is so frustrating.
Don't start crying. I hear your voice cracking. You're supposed to be a strong woman. Keep your shit together. And stop trying to act like you're looking for sympathy by crying. There's a bunch of confusion going on with the Dallas Mavericks. There's no doubt about that. As I've stated, I'm sure that the sexual innuendo, the sexual banter went both ways. But it's very obvious that Chidima Ussery and Snead went way over the line. And they're going to have to pay for that. But it's a good lesson. It's a good learning tool for a lot of brothers out there to grasp the environment that they're in, the atmosphere that they're in, and to move with discretion and discernment.
So upsetting. What is your reaction when you hear all this?
It upsets me because you have to put in effort to make a woman feel uncomfortable.
No, you don't. It's actually the opposite. You have to put an effort to make a woman feel comfortable, actually. All right, particularly in the workplace where most of them are very insecure and don't feel like they're good enough to do the job that they do. So they try to cover for all that by acting overly authoritative. What men owe to themselves and to everyone in the workplace, whether they be men or women, is professionalism. That's what it's about. It's not about trying to make a woman feel comfortable. It's about you being professional to both the men and the women, so that everybody can just do their job and be responsible for what they do or don't do. It's not about making anyone feel welcome or feel comfortable.
You have to think about that. You have to, I go out my way in workplaces, especially you and women around here, to go out my way to make women feel comfortable.
Well, you better, you better, bro, because no disrespect, you fit the profile of someone that they would accuse of sexual harassment.
To compliment them, to make them feel comfortable in the workplace. You have to really be a miserable person or an insecure person to feel like you have to use your power to make a woman sleep with you or to disrespect women. I think it's totally out of line.
Well, I agree with the fact that you have to be operating at a very low level mentally to be speaking to anyone like that and trying to imply that their future lies in them satisfying you sexually. But that's that industry. That's not just ussery. That's a cultural thing within that industry.
If they don't handle this in the best way possible and come down as hard as they can, then a lot of people are going to look at this league, definitely at the Dallas Mavericks, as they're known for covering up stuff and not handling stuff the right way. You have to handle this the right way. You have to really stand on this tough right now and nip this in the bud.
I agree with that, and they're going to have to do that. And I believe that Adam Silver understands that. At least he better. He better, because either he's going to do it or, them Me Too movement super dykes are going to jump in. Or them angry ass broads who like that chick, Tarana Burke, the bro who looked like somebody threw coffee grinds on her face. She going to jump in, especially if she feel like she can get paid off of the publicity of going back and forth with the NBA.
The sad part about it is I don't think this is a Dallas Mavericks specific issue. I think,
of course not,
this kind of behavior I've heard happens in a lot of places. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you heard, right? I mean, you heard. I bet you heard. For those of you who don't know, Amin El Hassan was involved with the Phoenix Suns front office. So, I mean, let's be for real. You heard a lot of stuff. You just hoping that that your little shit don't come out. Allegedly. I'm just playing. Maybe I'm playing. Let's see what come out with this dude. But I like Amin, though. He has a lot of good basketball takes.
And we like to think, like you said, because we have a great sport. It's an exciting time. We have the players who are the faces of our league are upstanding guys. Our commissioner is a very understanding guy.
And let me say this. He stated that the players are upstanding. In the report of one of the Dallas Mavericks female officials, she stated that she never had a problem with the players. It was always the people in management. And the NBA does not get, the NBA players don't get enough credit for how upstanding all of them are. You don't hear about any of the players in the NBA getting in trouble, particularly the top ones, whether it be LeBron, Steph, KD, James Harden, whoever you want to name, Chris Paul. I mean, these guys are like pristine level. Like no arrest record. Now, of course, people are going to say, well, we shouldn't be congratulating them for doing the right thing. That's true. But when you have access to more things, it means that you have to make more good decisions than the average person would, because now you have more access.
I guy who gets it.
Progressive.
We like to think that makes us immune, or we live in a bubble. Like the rest of the world has this madness, but not us, and that's not true. This is pervasive through society. It's not just Hollywood. It's not just Capitol Hill. It's us too. It's the NBA, and
yes, the NBA is everywhere. It's not just men on women. There's a lot of women who sexually harass men too.
Like Stack said, is you have to be a real monster. Some of the stuff we heard there, that's not just, hey, I was just trying to be nice and she misconstrued it as me hitting on her. That's predatory behavior.
Yes, it is predatory. It is predatory. And it makes me wonder, like, none of these women had men that wanted to get involved with this issue. That's why I state that a lot of these women, they valued their job more than they did their self-respect. And I'm sure that people will get upset by that. Will say, well, how could you say that? They might have had a hard time getting another job. Look, there's certain things, and I'm consistent with this because I said the same thing with the Terry Crews situation where he talked about how the agent tried to fondle him. And he said, I didn't want to hit him because it might cost me jobs. I mean, come on, bro. You letting the man grab your junk? Are you talking about you scared you won't be able to get another job? Get out of here, man. If you're a female who's getting told, oh, well, I think you should be getting gangbanged tonight, it wouldn't be a disrespect if you slapped the shit out of that man. He would deserve to be, to have the shit slapped out of him. Or if you told your man and the man end up having to talk to him. It is what it is.
Repeated predatory behavior for decades, not just recently. So pervasive and so in your face with it and over the top that the next job he got, he couldn't even keep for a couple months.
It's just amazing to me, too, because I think I've heard through all these conversations over the last 4 or 5 months, this stuff has been so in the news. There's some men around me who have said, oh, well, I don't even know what to do anymore. How do you know how to act? It's not that hard.
I agree. It's not that hard. Just be professional. But what Rachel Nichols doesn't understand is that the reason why men are telling her that they don't know how to act, what they really mean is that they're not going to hire women anymore. And I told you guys this in one of the previous Me Too videos that I did. A lot of these females who think that they're going to bum rush the workplace in these different, these different fields, a lot of these men who are hiring are going to start creating and concocting all these different parameters to avoid the dynamic of having women in the workplace, especially attractive women. That's really what they're saying. But I agree with her when she says it's not that hard. All you got to do is be professional. That's why I tell you, brothers, ignore these women, man, in the workplace. Ignore them. Ignore them.
It's really not. Don't stick your hands somewhere you know that they don't belong. Don't make a woman feel like she has to sleep with you to keep her job. Mm-hmm. Don't make her run away and have to quit what might be, hey, look, this is the NBA, right? This could be her dream job. They had several women in these articles who had to leave the team, go find work somewhere else. And anyone who's out finding work right now can tell you that's not the easiest thing in the world these days.
Well, look, let's be for real. It's easier for a woman to find a job than it is a man to find a job. It might not be easier for a woman to find a job that is considered a quote-unquote man's field. But let's be for real. Women can go get jobs making $50,000, $60,000 as administrative assistants and secretaries if all they have is a college degree. You could be a so-called black man and have a college degree and They're not letting you be no damn administrative assistant unless you're a homosexual. Allegedly.
Especially in this business.
In this business.
And no matter what the economy is like, this business is a hard job to get into.
For a woman.
And for anyone, but specifically for a woman, yes. It's a hard job to get into, it's hard to keep. You gotta put up with a lot of stuff. And so I'm sick to my stomach right now, just thinking about it. Like things like cornering people in elevators.
Like you have to be a real
A predator, man.
You're dying inside. You have to be a person that's dying inside to do.
Well, you also got to be a big simp. You have to be entitled, and you have to be a real lame. Like, I mean, what do you get out of that? Like I said, I've never understood the concept of going to strip clubs because I don't grasp what you can get out of throwing money at a woman for her to get naked. Like, you haven't seen titties and vagina before? A relationship is supposed to be the woman willingly wanting to do that for you. So in the same way, what would you get out of cornering a woman in an elevator and telling her all that dumb shit? Much less raping or sexually assaulting a woman. That's a sign of a mental disease, right? Or demonic possession, more like. It's not that difficult to comprehend or to evaluate.
To do that to a woman, and especially with the possession of power, and that's the biggest problem because, like you said, it's probably not the only place because a lot of guys in the position of power are guys with low self-esteem. Yeah. I've been around them.
I agree with that. That's true.
And they use that, and it's definitely not right. And if they don't do something to nip this in the bud right now and show some force, it's going to be a big problem.
I want to say something that you said off air that I'm going to share it with the world. If that happened to a player, what would the story look like today?
This is so, right? See, this to me is a fascinating point of discussion, right? Because players are public facing, right? And they get exposed if they act like this, which in this case, I want to read you this. We'll start this and we'll go backward. This is a quote from a female senior staffer when she was asked about the players. She said, quote, "I dealt with players all the time. I had hundreds of interaction with players. I never once had an issue. They always knew how to treat people. Then I'd go to the office, and it was this zoo, this complete expletive show. My anxiety would go down dealing with the players. It would go up when I got to my desk." And that is what I'm talking about. The players have at least some accountability publicly, and these front office people didn't.
Well, the players have total accountability publicly to the point where they get blamed for shit they didn't even do. Meanwhile, you have this frat house atmosphere that was instigated, inspired, undoubtedly by Mark Cuban. I have no doubt about that. For it to be that pervasive, it came from him. But it is what it is. That's going to be it on this video in regards to this topic. I do believe that there are going to be some developments. As I stated, they've already started that hotline, but I think that's only going to be the first of a lot of things to come. But once again, brothers, just keep it professional. And if you decide to go over that, make sure that you maintain your evidence. Peace.